Good evening and welcome to the January 28th edition of the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on YouTube and Periscope. My name is Tom Luongo. Got a lot to talk about tonight. I want to talk about Venezuela because what else would we be talking about? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez being crazy? Ah, that's passé. So, we'll wait for a few of y'all to get into... Oh, look. The Restream chat app is not working properly. What a shock. All right. So let's see how that works. No, I don't want to look at that. I just want my stuff. All right. I hope you all are good. Let's see what happens. I just may have to get that and bust out the, just wait 1 second here while I get this, pop out the chat on YouTube since I can't even see anything on Periscope. Anyway, it doesn't matter. There we go. Alrighty then. Let's get this show on the road. So, yeah, Venezuela is kind of important, and that's what we're going to talk about for now. So now that I've wasted a minute and a half of everybody's time, let's get started. So the Trump administration today doubled down. And ratcheted up sanctions against PDVSA, which is the Venezuelan state oil company. These sanctions are serious. It is obvious at this point that the United States has moved openly into regime change mode. And this is a complete refutation of Trump's stated campaign promise. While he stands there and pontificates about how he's going to keep his campaign promises on the wall. Remember? Campaign promises made, campaign promises kept. That was his midterm thing, right? That's what he said. And all those MAGA peds who all showed up to all those silly little fucking rallies all over the Midwest, which didn't work. And now, on the two most important issues, regime change and regime change, well, that doesn't matter because we have plans for energy dominance, which are absolutely imperative, and Trump, all puns intended, all campaign promises. This is what John Bolton was hired to do. John Bolton was hired to shift our foreign policy away from Asia this way. It's always, I just finished reading a great article over at Moon of Alabama, and Bernard, again, kind of knocks it out of the park. I have to give him some credit on this one. I've been working on stuff in Central Asia for the last couple of days, so I really haven't been focused that hard on the ins and outs of Venezuela. But Bernard reminds me that part of Trump's plan, energy dominance-wise, is to create a North and South America version of OPEC as an antipode to OPEC. Right. And the fact that the Saudis really don't want to be under our thumb anymore and are trying desperately to stay in the middle and keep Russia on their side. The fact of the matter is that, the fact of the matter is that John Bolton John Bolton is not a very complicated guy. Okay. He doesn't have a lot of plans. I mean, there was this photo op this afternoon where he had his legal pad out there and he showed, hey, 5,000 troops to Colombia. Like, give me a break, John. Are you kidding me? How amateurish are you? How amateur hour is this shit at this point? Because but Bolton's not a complicated guy. He's a bully. He's a warmonger. He thinks he's a patriot. And he believes that the only way the American system can perpetuate itself is through constant warfare. Period. That we can only live if we suppress everybody else. Period. And so that means the American system, and he's in many ways he's right, because at the end of the day, the current American system is unsustainable without the petrodollar, without the financial markets, without control over the financial markets, without some form of means by which to control the value of the dollar going forward. And in order to maintain the empire, which at this point cannot be sustained fiscally without running severe deficits. We're well past the possibility here of sustaining this country by ratcheting up our oil exports and paying everything off. Trump's going to run a $1.2 trillion deficit this year. He ran a $1 trillion deficit last year, and that's the on-budget deficit. That's not talking about all the stuff that's off-budget. Okay? These are numbers that you cannot argue with. Okay? And interest rates are going to continue rising. As much as Trump doesn't want them to rise, interest rates are rising. You can't just make interest rates whatever you want them to be because, well, you've got a central bank and we're going to use it, damn it. At the end of the day, markets are bigger than buffoons like Trump and buffoons like Bolton. And you have to remember these things. So, Bolton isn't a complicated guy. Trump gave him tasks on how to get things done. This is the way John Bolton goes about it. We're going to do regime change. We're going to take control of Venezuela's oil. We're going to manufacture a crisis through the application of sanctions, which are acts of war, which are targeted at the people. Oh no, they talk a good game about, oh no, we're targeting Maduro's government by trying to starve them of money. So within the sanctions regime that was just announced today, what's the point? Oh, well, the money that Venezuela would get for Citgo refining their oil in the refineries on the Gulf Coast that Venezuela, by the way, owns, the PVDSA owns, that's only allowed to now go into frozen accounts, which that money will then be given to the opposition leader, Guaido, to run an operation, to run a coup against Maduro. That's what this is about. That's what's going to happen here. Now, here's the fun part. Do you think you can take over Venezuela with 5,000 troops from Colombia? Sanctions do nothing but empower the very people that we're trying to get to flip on Maduro. I mean, are these guys dumb? Or are they just that vicious? I know we did the same thing to Japan before World War II. We did exactly the same thing to Japan. And then we waited for Japan to attack us and then use that as a means by which to get ourselves into World War II, because the American people didn't want to get into World War II. And so Roosevelt had to manufacture a means to do so. And the easiest way to do that was to invite an attack. And that's what the oil embargo was all about. Roosevelt refused to meet with the Japanese delegation in late November to end the oil embargo. The oil embargo was done purposefully to get Japan to attack at Pearl Harbor. They moved the aircraft carriers out to sea. The Japanese attack was ineffective. We got lucky, but it wouldn't have mattered. World War II would have ended 6 months later if the Japanese attack was actually effective at Pearl Harbor. Because once you wake up the United States, that was it. So, at the end of the day, buffoons like Bolton and Pompeo and Pence have sold this thing to Trump. I really feel my initial take on this is the right one. And I've been going back and forth for a couple days now. Don't get me wrong. I know many of you are subscribers, and I know that yesterday's market report, I was going back and forth about the public version of events that I'm portraying and what I was talking about privately with subscribers were two totally different things, or at least what I was considering. And a lot of the things I was considering was the idea that Trump is being backed into this and that Pence actually started this on his own, and that the timing on this was done in order to maximize the blowback on Trump with his base while he's caving, quote unquote, on the border wall. Which is an argument that has some merit. Let's not kid ourselves. That has merit. And if Pence and Bolton and Pompeo don't really work for Trump, they work for AIPAC or whoever the hell they work for. The Davos crowd, call them what you want. It don't really matter. They're all basically the same fucking people. Wall Street, K Street, AIPAC, Davos crowd, it's all the same fucking group of people. They all fight amongst themselves a little bit, but the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, it's all the same people pushing for the same things. They all want Venezuela's oil. They all want control of the Middle East. They all want control of the means of production, the engine of the world, and they want that control unassailable by democratic systems. That's what they want. It's not hard to figure out what the fuck's happening here. It's not hard. It's not hard. The question is whether or not you're just willing to admit it to yourself that that's the way the world works. So now the question is Trump complicit or is he a patsy? Well, given that he wants energy dominance, given that he's made a point of saying, if you want us to save you, it's going to cost you half your oil. Well, when you're the ones that destroyed our lives, no. How about no? Because while Venezuela has been incompetently managed for 20 years, remember, it's American pressure on Venezuela that has caused, and the slow tightening of sanctions on them. This has been going on since Chavez was in power. It's been going on since fucking 9/11, guys. This is nothing new. For 20 years, this has been happening. For 20 years, this has been a slow ratchet up of pressure on Venezuela, slowly cutting them off from the world economy and the necessary imports. And it's Venezuela's own fault for not diversifying their economy. This is where Chavez's incompetence, this is where Maduro's incompetence has hurt them. They never broadened the economy out to not make them vulnerable to this kind of thing. So that when the sanctions cut into their ability to import basic necessities, doesn't matter how much oil you have. You sell it, okay, then you have to empower smugglers, you have to empower all these people to get around the sanctions. Well, what are you doing? You're empowering all the very worst people in the society. You're creating the oligarchs you then complain about. Meanwhile, the people starve. Meanwhile, the people's quality of life drops like a rock. Does this sound familiar basically here in the United States as well? Because got news for you. It's exactly the same fucking game plan they run here. Except the sanctions are on us, are on our capital. And our ability to make a fucking living. That's what taxes are. The sanctions on doing business. It's what regulations are. It's what OSHA is. It's what fucking NSA is. It's what all this shit is. It's what NAFTA is. It's what all of this crap is. It's all variations on the same thing in order to suck your profit up to them and then have you get angry at the fact that the system creates oligarchs. The problem here is that they're empowering the freaking Marxist crazies like Elizabeth Warren and Ocasio-Cortez, who are, by the way, eventually going to take this country over. Because when the system is this corrupt, it's this intolerable, guess what? Like I've been saying for months now, if we all grew up in Latin America, we'd all be leftists by American definitions. Why? Because the alternative is the fucking sons of bitches who are nominally privateers. They're all friggin' fascist assholes. The natural antipode to corporate fascism is communism. Don't let them steal your productive capacity. Don't privatize it. Don't leave it in public hands. Nationalize it. This is the fight that's going on in the alternative press all day long. I read the foreign alternative press all day long. They're all leftists because they're all leftists in as an antipode, as an abreaction against crypto fascism, whatever you want to call what we corporate, you know, the corporatocracy that the West, the colonial corporatocracy that the West engages in. I'm just throwing words out here, but you guys know what I'm talking about. I disagree, Big Smart Armed. I don't think it's not Trump. I'm so tired of listening to you guys who just want to make everything about Israel and the Jews. It's not that. It's far deeper than that. The Jews are a bunch of, I mean, really? The Jews you're complaining about are a bunch of suck-ups to the real power in this world. The real power in this world resides in Westminster. It resides in France. It resides in Washington. Okay, that's where the old money is. Okay, let's not kid. Let's not. You know, it's in the Vatican and as many other places as well. It's in those places. When you guys sit here and do nothing but like make it easy and just say, well, it's all the Jews' fault. Fucking blow me, because it's not the Jews' fault. Jesus Christ. It's like, you know, it's not. Seriously. Like, you know, it's like everybody else. You go with the flow. You go with the people who are in charge. It's not that tough. And all of this, and what's unreal about this is that in the long run, don't think for a second that Trump isn't okay with this. I was on the phone with a subscriber this morning, called me up out of the blue this morning, chatted for a little while. And he asked me about Trump. It's like, what do you think he's just a Zionist stooge, or do you think he's, you know, captured? Like, you know, do you think he's honest? And like, I don't think it's that simple. I think it's like in between. Donald Trump is amoral. He doesn't give a shit. Doesn't care. The man doesn't have a moral center. Okay, he doesn't. Except maybe he doesn't like, you know, human trafficking. I mean, maybe that's his moral limit. But everything else is on the table with him. Let's not kid ourselves. Why would you think otherwise? Like, Trump is hawkish on everybody who is a threat to his version of the American empire. And his version of the American empire rests on his colonial, 17th century colonial thinking, his 17th century view on trade, his 17th century view on how you run a colonial empire. Got news for you. And his love of America is this insane level of fealty to an America that really never existed. But, you know, baby boomers. Yeah, let's never forget. I mean, Stoyanovich brings up the point about Britain. The Brits have their fingers all over this stuff. Six weeks ago, Trump ordered withdrawal from Syria. Now more troops are going there. Trump doesn't give a shit about any of this. He's completely amoral and completely trapped and completely neutered. They don't sit here and continue to say that it's not Trump. It's the deep state Israeli lobby. Bullshit. It's Trump. Trump has a very simple energy dominance policy. He wants to end the empire abroad, certainly in Central Asia, bring some of it back over here and subjugate Central and South America, and become the producer of the marginal barrel of oil and create and either take off the market or control every major oil producer he can get his hands on. So Saudi Arabia, check. Venezuela in process. Iran on deck. Libya destroyed. He'll go back into Libya. If the Libyans ever get their shit together and start pumping oil again, got news for you. The United States will be going back into Libya. With the ultimate goal, Russia. And Trump is on board with this, guys. This is nothing new. He doesn't want to see our guys die, so he wants to use money and debt. He wants to use money to get this done. And every once in a while, if we have to use some troops, well, yeah, we'll do that. If we have to overthrow a dictator, fine, we'll do it. No regime change was a big ask. You know, the whole art of the deal thing, big ask. Oh, but we're going to negotiate back. Well, you know, not regime change against the bad guys or the regime change against the guys who don't want to sell oil in our currency. Well, fuck those guys. They need to die. Again, Trump has no moral center. And by the way, he also doesn't have any game. He might beat Pelosi on the wall because, well, he's got all the frickin' cards, but so the fuck what? Who are you beating? You're beating the senile old boomer who's got no cards to play in her own party that's in complete shambles. So El Vaccaro brings up the point about the shale industry. I'll bring up a point that I just read in David Stockman's latest book. The oil E&P industry has generated over the last 7 years $100 billion in negative free cash flow. I'll say that again, $100 billion approximately in negative free cash flow. So yeah, you can't rely on the shale industry to do anything other than boost the numbers. It's as much a mirage as the 3.7% unemployment rate. It's as much a mirage as a 4% GDP rise. Well, when you deficit spend $1.2 trillion, you're going to get a rise in GDP. It's just going to happen. So, of course, with the shale industry most likely going to roll over in the face of higher interest rates, though many of them are still profitable at $60 a barrel, but not at 50. But you know, WTI isn't selling at $60 a barrel. WTI is selling at 50, and in some places under 45. So James, I know that the expectation, my expectations were too high. The alternatives were her and a Bush, were either Trump or Hillary Clinton or Jeb Bush. I know that. I know what we got. What we got was nothing anywhere. We got something that's, you know what we have? We have Orange Obama. That's what we've got. He doesn't even deserve the Orange Jesus appellation anymore. He's just Orange Obama. You know, the Trump is innocent and a victim is nonsense. This is his plan. Venezuela is part of it. Iran is next. But here's the gig. Trump also understands that if this fails, Bolton and Pompeo will be fired, because they will have sold this to him as a blueprint on how to kill Iran. And if that doesn't work in Venezuela, which should be easy, never going to work in Iran. National income accounting is neither income nor accounting. Exactly. Mark Bogosian. WDM, I hear you on your energy dominance theory. If that's true, then we all need to plan for Armageddon, because the chances of success are de minimis, but the risks are the total collapse of the USA or much worse. Not in the short run. In the short run, the feckless cunts over in Europe are going to collapse first. Because last I checked, 41% of the world's trade, of the world's financial transactions, are in the dollar. Okay, we wound up getting Jeb. No, we didn't get Jeb. We got something worse than Jeb. When you really unpack all of this, we got something worse than Jeb. What about the petro cryptocurrency? Well, as far as I can tell at this point, it's still vaporware. The last I read about it the other day, because I went looking at it, and I have an article, I think, in editorial for Strategic Culture, or may have gone on today. The Russians aren't willing to do business in it. No one's seen any blocks go by the block. There's no blocks being mined. There's no activity on the blockchain or anything like that. So at this point, I don't know what's going on with the petro. I know that if the system that's been sold to us goes into play, then it's a sincere challenge to the current financial structure of the world, because the petro plus the sovereign bolivar has the capacity, if operated properly, to challenge SWIFT and the rest of it and allow them to get around the sanctions. I haven't heard anything about an Iran crypto. At the end of the day, why don't they just take freaking Bitcoin? It's secure, it's fast. When you're moving $22 million, when you're moving a $22 million tender worth of oil, you're not willing to throw a couple of bucks at the miners to ensure that they mine it in the next block? Yeah, I think you do. So, but no, we got something much worse than Jeb Bush. Because Jeb Bush would be easy to be against, because he's just Jeb Bush. He's just part of the oligarchy. Now, what we have is something even worse. We have someone who was sold to us as a populist, who was going to make America great again, and was going to empower all the deplorables and the libertarians and everybody else who've been telling everybody for years that the fucking Marxists are crazy. And guess what? That should be all you need to know. Orange Obama. El Vaquero says, define short for the short run. What I mean by short run is the next 3 to 5 years. I think the next 3 to 5 3 years certainly are going to be dominated by Europe. And then the years after that are going to be dominated by the United States. When we get to the other side of Trump, it's still possible that Trump could win re-election in 2020, because look who's running on the Democrat side. And they're all getting picked off one by one now by Hillary Clinton so that she can run again. We get some domestic social peace, but it's ramping up. It's going to ramp over the course of the 6 years. If Trump does not stop what he's doing, if he does not stop the path that he's on and start going back to what he campaigned on, 2024 will see the rise of some ridiculous socialists. It'll be Maduro. It'll be our version of Maduro. Bitcoin is not a scam. If you don't understand, if you're in 2019 and still think Bitcoin is a scam, then you don't understand it. It's just that simple. Bitcoin's been pumped and dumped so many times, it's not funny. The reason it was pumped and dumped to 20,000 was to do exactly what is to get guys like you to never get into it. That's what creating a futures market for was. It was in order to wag the dog, because that's what futures markets do. They wag the dog by creating paper Bitcoins to then push against hard assets. Same way they've done it with paper gold and paper silver. It's the same thing. Paper oil. Does anybody really believe that the price of oil is this goddamn volatile? Futures markets perform an amazingly important job in uncorrupted financial markets. Unfortunately, in the casino that we have today, with trillions of dollars of central bank liquidity sloshing around, guys can do pretty much anything they want for political reasons in order to move the price of an asset wherever the fuck they want in the short to medium term. But let's go back to, January 2017. Bitcoin was trading at what? $800? Today it's trading at $3,400. But somehow that five-fold, 4.5-fold increase? Nah, it's a pump and dump. It's a fucking break. The whole point of the adventure was to push it up and drop it in order to keep people on the sidelines, in order to keep it from becoming anything important over the next 1 to 2 years. That was the point. But guess what? Here's the problem. Blockchain technology continues to move forward. These guys are already, even at these prices today, are still wildly capitalized, well beyond their initial thoughts. The serious ones, not the bullshit artists, not the 95% of the cryptos out there that are crap. I'm talking about the hardcore, the real projects, the ones that matter, the ones that have been built purposefully to perform the necessary task of clearing transactions between sovereign consumers, and who understand the power of decentralization. And I've spoken to a lot of these designers. I've met with them. I've talked to them. I know who they are. At least I know who a couple of them are. Those guys are serious, and they've got more than enough capital to build the systems that they need to build, while everybody's thinking it's a pump and dump and it's all over. I love bear markets. Bear markets are fantastic. Bear markets are when real work gets done, because it's during bull markets that everybody goes fucking crazy and just wants to make money. Sorry, bear markets. That's when real advancement happens. That's when real exploration happens in the gold industry, because everybody's got to be really tight with their money and they got to be really smart about it. And it's conflict and it's adversity that generates innovation. When you've got an unlimited printing press at your disposal, you're not innovative. You just view everything as a fucking nail because you got a cudgel. And that's what we're doing right now. That's the way Trump is acting. Trump and Bolton and the rest of them just say, well, we have all this financial power. We have all this military power. We have all this power. We're going to use it. And we're going to use it in the most ham-fisted way imaginable. We're going to use it in the dumbest way imaginable, because power doesn't make you smart. It doesn't make you insouciant. It doesn't make you insightful. It makes you dumb. It makes you lazy. Ugh. It's just Og Smash, for fuck's sake. What is this, 14-year-old D&D, the geopolitical years? Give me a fucking break. And that's the part that we have to remember when we're doing the analysis on this shit. We have to remember these things. These people are not that smart. They don't have to be smart. They've got power. Why do you have to be smart when you have power? Why are most of the people who are listening to my voice right now have such respect for Putin? Because Putin uses what power he has the most judiciously, like a surgeon, with precision, like a surgeon. He navigates all of this stuff because he absolutely has to, because he makes 1 or 2 wrong moves, forget it, he's done. There's a coup inside the Kremlin and he's done. So just because Bolton and the rest of them are so friggin' lazy and stupid, they just throw power around like an 800-pound gorilla in a fucking china shop, doesn't mean that the 800-pound gorilla in the china shop still can't do damage to you. But we damn well can. I don't think that Bitcoin will ever be a real trading currency. I think Bitcoin will be a reserve asset. I think its mempool is strong enough, and it's what's the word I'm looking for? And the faith and the trust in it, because it's the oldest and biggest and most amazing blockchain, that it will act as a reserve asset. You have to think of it like, I wrote about this shit in 2017 and early 2018. Think of it like the bottom of Exter's pyramid. You got to think about it as the reserve asset, like gold that sits at the bottom of the monetary system, and everything else can be built on top of it. And that's the way I really think is, you have to think of Bitcoin in those terms. I think Bitcoin is a day-to-day transaction. No, I think it'll only be the most trusted or trust necessary transactions will be ever done in Bitcoin. And I think everything else is a different story. Now, that being said, like I said, I also believe that like all the security mule coins are the ones that are actually going to win the day in the long run, because there's plenty of ways to approximate Bitcoin's mempool and its hashing power in terms of security with 1/100th of the computing power and actual power necessary to run them. But that's for a different discussion for a different day. So let's see. Putin announced Russian oil-backed crypto. Not really. But how did Vlad do after the first 2 years? He's a career politician. James, it's been Putin's deft handling of everything since the initial push by Obama into Syria in 2013, where Putin has been at his best. Because that's when he poked the bull. That's when he poked us in the eye and said, no. And since then, we've been after him. And he's been brilliant every day, almost on a daily basis since then. Because because it's one thing to kind of stand up to the United States domestically, but now he's doing it on the world stage and showing everybody how to do it. That's the real kicker. That's why we hate Putin. So I'm no Neocon, says 2020 website. How does non-interventionism solve domination-seeking countries like China? Why do you believe China is looking for world domination? I asked that question seriously. I'm not saying that the Chinese aren't interested in expanding their influence around the world. I'm asking for why do you think they're looking for domination? The point is that domination is a very Western mindset. And we tend to project onto other people that which we are actually engaged in. The Chinese have their own goals. And I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke up your ass and say that the Chinese don't have very specific goals. I just don't think they pattern the same way ours do. I don't think it's a direct overlay. And non-interventionism beats any expansionist power because you don't waste capital on a military that you spend overseas, because all that money you spend on the military is worthless. It's not defense, it's offense. It costs trillions, and that's money that's not being spent at the productive part of the economy here. It necessitates constant intervention by the central bank. It necessitates running a massive trade deficit and budget deficit. It requires all of those things. It empowers the worst people at home to create the very corrupt system that we have, and which has paralyzed Washington from being able to change itself or do anything. And it hollows out the productive capacity of the actual economy. And that's where you really truly fight, quote unquote, your enemy at a strategic and geopolitical level. You outproduce them. Dude, I'm a huge gold fan. I have a soft spot for cryptos because I understand gold's liquidity issues. I certainly understand gold's liquidity issues in an age of grabby-handed governments that are going broke that want all of your physical capital. That won't let you walk across a fucking arbitrary political border with more than a couple of ounces of it. This is a big deal, and this is something you really need to consider. I'm not against gold. I love gold. Name of the show is Gold, Goats, and Guns, and it's gold first, then goats, then guns, for fucking reason. Love gold. Own gold. Recommend gold. Always do. But gold has its limits. It's not a catch-all solution to a problem. And I worry about Tulsi Gabbard. I like the idea of Tulsi Gabbard. I don't like the idea that Tulsi Gabbard is 37 years old and doesn't have children. So that's strike number one. And then there's how much of this is her for real and how much of this is grandstanding just to stand out in the crowd. Stoyanovich, Putin has played for peace with the realization that Russia needs to equip militarily and grow economically, can only do that in a time of peace. He's running Peter Stolpian's, Peter the Great's plan, saying, look, just give Russia 20 years of unimpeded intervention from the West, and we can have a golden age in Russia. And he's about 15 years into that. Seems clear from their economic policies, economic supremacy. No, actually not. China's got a whole bunch of problems that they're going to have to deal with once the United States busts, because there's so much of what they've built is predicated on what we're going to build, what we're going to lose. So they're going to get part of it as the capital flows all over there in the next decade, but it's going to be, but it's not about quote unquote expansionism. Physical gold is an issue because in a state of emergency, gold won't be confiscated, gold will be locked down, and you won't be able to move it for fear of confiscation. There's a fundamental difference. Tom's hat for president in 2020. Do a better job than Trump is right now. I don't plan to vote for anybody in 2020. I voted for Trump once. I won't do it again. In 2019, Hitler is China, Putin is FDR, the US is Germany, and England is still England. When the Empire Project begins to fail badly, you declare war on your own citizens to suppress them. We have been there for a while. You can store your physical bullion in places like Hong Kong and Singapore. Just make sure you keep an eye open. You keep open a second account with a second passport. Yes. Hong Kong and Singapore are good places if you want to. As an American, though, foreign bank accounts are immediately suspect. So it's got to be done very carefully. And I'm not here to tell you how to go about doing it. Just understand that FATCA, AML, Know Your Customer laws, all that shit is designed to keep Americans from being able to move stuff overseas. We are already at the point where we're not allowed to move capital out of the country. It's been that way for a while. So is China going to bust first of the U.S.? No, China is going to wind up surviving all this, without a doubt. Over the next 10 to 15 years, China will wind up being the place that that grabs all the capital. The capital will all move to China because it won't have any other choice. The West is collapsing. China is rising. We are falling. Okay? As much as we don't want to admit this, and we don't have any way to stop it at this point. We want to stop it. Well, some of us want to stop it, but the system's not going to allow us to stop. Ocasio-Cortez, Elizabeth Warren, people like them, they're on the rise here in the United States. They're coming. You're not going to be able to stop them. And certainly not going to stop them with Trump at the helm. Putin rolls out a gold-backed crypto, I'm all in. More likely, Putin will roll out a crypto ruble, and he will roll out a crypto BRICS currency, maybe, but it'll be something to unify as a single currency across the Eurasian Economic Union, all the countries in it, as a as a beginning for a single currency zone via a free trade zone / customs union. Excuse me. China will see a brain drain soon. The rich and smart hate their new social score system. Direct flights from Tijuana to Beijing are now weekly. I'm not going to deny to you that the Chinese Communist Party isn't trying to build a dystopian nightmare. But in the game of global capital, Juan, I say this all the time, you don't have to be good. You just have to be better than everybody else. You don't have to be fast. You don't have to be the fastest. You just have, you don't have to be great. You just have to be better than everybody else. You can still suck. Objectively still suck. Hey. The Russians have been they're not only on a gold buying spree, big smart armed. I'm going to bring this up. This is a good point to make. I don't know if you guys saw it. I think we've talked about it here, but some of you new guys have not seen, may not have seen this. But the Russians in 2018 bought more gold for their central bank reserves than the country produced. Russians are going to produce, or rather, the Russian gold industry, one of the largest in the world, produced about 265 tons of gold last year. The Russians are going to buy, or did buy, more than 280 or something, like almost 300 tons of gold last year. So where did the rest of the money, where did the rest of the gold come from? This is your homework assignment. It's not even a homework assignment. If anybody knows the answer to this, please board it out in the comment thread, comments below. Where did the difference between what the Russians produced in the domestic market, which they could just buy directly with their foreign exchange reserves, their current account surplus, or between that number and the amount that they actually brought in to their foreign exchange reserves. I didn't see Pepe Escobar's, or I like pulled the tab out and was going to read it and never got around to it today. I got sidetracked by other things. I mean to read it. S&P futures down 1250 doesn't mean anything. Does anybody know where the Russians are getting their gold? Mark Bogosian gets the winner. Oil to China. Well, not necessarily oil to China, but oil in general. It's through the gold convertible petro yuan contract. So oil futures. So Russia is selling its oil on the Shanghai Oil Exchange, taking the profits and laundering the profits out and converting them directly to gold on the Shanghai Exchange, which is the reason why that contract was designed the way it was designed, and then send the gold back to Russia. Do you think the Russian state is allowed to trade gold futures on the COMEX? So, do you really think there's 8,000 tons of gold in Fort Knox? No, because some of it is stored under the Mariner Eccles building in New York. I'm not going to answer that question because I don't know. What mechanisms does Maduro have to get around sanctions? Smuggling, which they've been doing for 15 years. And trading in, and these various special purpose vehicles that are being set up around the world. Okay. So did anybody notice the little story about India and Iran removing the foreign taxes on trade in foreign currencies for various banks that are going to do business. They're going to be clearing all the Iranian oil transactions. Anybody notice that one? No. You don't think that can be done with other banks? Yes. Venezuela hasn't been kicked out of the SWIFT system, so they can still move stuff around. Eventually, they'll be kicked out of the SWIFT system. That's coming. I don't know whether it's there or not in Fort Knox. I don't really care. I know the world thinks that we have 8,133.5 tons of gold. That's all that matters. And I don't think it matters. And at this point, it's not enough to... It still gives us around 19% of M2 in terms of gold reserves. It's not terrible. Oh, and by the way, you guys do know that the Chinese, or Hong Kong, the Hong Kong Exchange owns the London Metals Exchange, right? There's not going to ever be a precious metals standard in the United States. We're not going back to that. The Russians just signed deals with Maduro on exploration and production deals for oil and for upgrading their gold mining sector as well. Yes, that is true, Thornton. 51 minutes. What is Iran setting up for? The ability to sell its oil on the open market without ever needing permission from the United States. So once these vehicles are set up, once these systems are set up, there's no reason why other people can't take part in them. Remember, things like SWIFT are just messaging systems at the end of the day. They're just code. They're really not all that complicated. And they're not hard to set up. The reason why it took so long for the Russians to set theirs up, relatively speaking, is because Putin's got the same deep state problem that Trump's got. He tells people to do something and the bureaucracy ignores him. It finally had to threaten them with firing all of them and putting them in fucking jail for doing their jobs and giving him some recommendations on what to do about crypto. He had to literally threaten people within the Bank of Russia to finally do their job and get the thing set up. Nabalina friggin' dragged her feet for 2 years. Oh God, I wish all the gold was in Tom's backyard. Putin already did it. The U.S. lifted aluminum sanctions because the Americans need aluminum, Russian aluminum, in order to run in order to build aircrafts. So once Deripaska reduced his stake and we were able to save face over that mess, we lifted the sanctions. But Deripaska is still, he's still persona non grata here in the United States because there's something personal between him and Goldman Sachs. The ones on aluminum, Oliver Oldman Stoner. We should lift sanctions on Russia, but we're not going to. Trump believes in sanctions. He believes that they're an effective tool for getting what he wants. He believes in leverage. Donald Trump doesn't believe in much. He believes in leverage. And he believes these things give him leverage. They don't. What they do is they wind up hollowing out his own economy, which he's trying to save through some of the dumbest fucking policy I've seen in a long time. I'm now completely done with this guy. I mean, he doesn't have any game. He has some game when it comes to, but again, beating up on Nancy Pelosi is not hard. The funny part is that I remember having a discussion with a friend of mine about this, and I kept telling him, dude, Putin is killing it right now. This is 2-3 years ago. He's like, yeah, but who's he fighting against? These people are idiots. This was before Trump came into power. I'm like, yeah, you're fighting Obama and those guys. They're freaking morons, those guys. Anybody can fight around them. I'm like, Trump? Bolton? Netanyahu? mean, if you know, Putin may not be great, may not be the greatest geopolitical strategist of all time, but again, you don't have to be good in an objective sense or in a historical sense. You just have to be better than the current crop of morons you're fighting against. You know, I'll give you a perfect example. The other night I was playing at my regular, because we're almost done, so I'm gonna venture off into personal speak for a little bit. So Wednesday nights I go out and hang out with I do my bowling league thing, right? American men used to have their bowling leagues on Wednesday nights, or darts leagues or whatever. But I go to my gaming night, right, where we sit down and play board games. So the other night we're getting done and got an opportunity to play a game that I'm terrible at, right? Name of the game is Manhattan Project Energy Empire. So actually, it's a geopolitics game. It's a worker placement, dry Euro engine building game. It's not, but it's got great, but it's also a really cool game. And it's one that I want to own. But every time I get a chance to play it on someone else's copy, it like satiates my need to play it. But it's a game I'm not particularly good at. I've played it like 3 times, and every time I've come in last, and I'm just bad at it. So the other night we're playing it, but the people that I normally play against, the people who are really good at it, they were playing Terraforming Mars, which they always play. A game I don't like. I don't give a fuck. Hey, let's play Energy Empire. I'm like, great, let's do it. I was like, the entire time saying, I'm terrible at this game. There's no way. And I finally did something halfway decent. And I wound up winning the game going away. Because the people I was playing against weren't any good at it. 2 people hadn't played it before. One person who had played it before and loves it, like me, usually comes in last, and he did it again. He came in last. So there's the lesson for you. For an evening, I was Putin. And at the table were John Bolton and Angela Merkel and Barack Obama and Netanyahu. Fuck, that was easy. Dude, I won the game by 20 fucking points. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like in a game to 100, effectively. So right around, the winning score is usually right around 100. Winning by 20 is a fucking blowout. So there you go. All right. Yes, Russian metals are required for U.S. military needs. Russians produce a significant portion of the world's titanium, nickel, and aluminum. These are all important for high temperature aircraft frame metals. Okay? There's no way around it. These nickel superalloys, these aluminum superalloys that are used in all of these advanced avionics and stuff, and jet engines and all this stuff, and it's all about those. It's all about those things. It's all about those metals. So I get to be the smartest guy on the short bus. Exactly. It was great, actually, to be honest with you, because now I got to play that game in such a way where I wasn't like, it was really cool because it's a game I really like. I really like Manhattan Project and Energy Empire. I think it's a fantastic game. And, but it was fun to finally get a chance to play it in a lesser stressed environment where not at least 2 people at the table know exactly what they need to do and are just better at reading the board because they've played it enough times, and they're also better at those types of games than I am. It was great. It was a good mix of people, and it was a good time. We all had a great time, and I won, and I didn't care that I won. I just actually played well. So, all right, there you go. All right. It wasn't that it's a geopolitical game, North on 60. It's that it's this particular type of. Yeah, I have to go into like describing board games to you, but there's a particular type of board game which we call engine builders, where you start with a base series of types of actions you can take, and over the course of time you acquire assets. It doesn't matter what they are, depending on the game. In this case, in this particular game, you're acquiring buildings, or technological upgrades or whatever that give you advantages and that allow you to build an engine so that when you take one action, you chain it into 2 or 3 actions, and then all of a sudden you're generating resources faster than everybody else. And that's what we call an engine builder. It's just literally, and then it just kind of ramps up in terms of your production ramps up geometrically if you do it right. If you don't ramp up geometrically, you lose. I'm usually really good at building linear engines in games that require geometric engines. And I'm just not particularly great at them. And the only way for me to get better at them is to play that particular game over and over and over again, because I don't see the math that's built behind the game. I don't see it organically. I can't read the rule book, look at the cards and go, oh, that's the math engine. I get it. I have to play the game and then learn by example. I actually, it's one of the things about me. I learn by failure. I learn tactically by doing something and then it not working. And I go, oh, that's what I did wrong. And then have to do it again. And it's this constant process of iteration. So it takes me a long time to learn how to play certain games well. There are certain games like Agricola that I will never be good at, because it requires you to build your engine before you even start playing by deciding what cards you're going to play in order to then navigate your way through the game. And if you don't have the ability to see that far into the future, you're fucked. And you're destined to score 35 points. And 35 points in Agricola is pretty average. So there you go. Do I like games like Diplomacy? I haven't played Diplomacy in a long time, but I love Diplomacy. Actually, my favorite board game of all time is Avalon Hill's classic Dune, because it is the classic area control game. It's all about bluffing. It's all politics. It's all brilliant, and I'm fucking good at it. And we used to play it, and it's the game we joke about it's the game I nearly failed out of college playing. I haven't played it in years because I don't have a copy of it. It's been out of print for years. It is one of the world's greatest games ever made. I've written blog posts about it. It's truly an evolutionary design for its time, certainly in 1979 and everything. And so, yeah, so games like that I absolutely adore. So yeah, it's these dry German Euros that I take a long time to learn how to play well, as opposed to the political games I'm really good at. I'm really good at balancing board state and reading other players, and in that respect, and going, you have that. Okay, so that means you're the one who's actually in the lead, and I can shave 3 points. Okay, I know exactly what to do, though. I attack you. All right, we did that shit for years. I've played multiple games that I'm really good at that stuff, which is why I'm a really good geopolitical analyst, because I can see how these guys are like positioning themselves at the poker table, for lack of a better term, the poker table. It's really a little bit more complicated than that, but it's the same kind of thing. Whereas a lot of these German games are just math exercises purporting to be games, and therefore it's a much more subtle experience, and you got to know the math first in order to be able to then they just became, basically they just go with pretty pictures on them, and that's a different thing altogether. Yes. So yes, they're both Avalon Hill games. So yeah, I have all the great Avalon Hill games from that era. I have Titan, Dune, Advanced Civilization. I haven't played Diplomacy. The last time I played Diplomacy, honestly, was at a local con in the 1990s. I haven't played it in years, and none of my regular group will play Diplomacy today, because, well, we all like each other and we want to be able to show up next week, because Diplomacy is the kind of game that after you're done playing Diplomacy for 8 hours, you never want to speak to the people that you've played Diplomacy with, because that's the way the game goes. Never played Axis and Allies. I played Axis and Allies once or twice. I really got into the Ameritrash games that moved away from die rolling. So Axis and Allies to me is kind of like a good version of Risk, right? And today there are really good versions of Risk, like Risk 2210 and Risk Godstorm and a couple of others, and then of course Risk Legacy, the campaign game. But I got away from that, and I really got into the games that didn't have real die rolling. I mean, the only closest one that I ever played would be Titan, where it was a big monster slugfest kind of thing. So that's that. But yeah, I mean, I could go on and on. Board games are my other like real passion here. So we could do this for another hour, and I wouldn't even like get started, and you all would be bored to tears. But yes, cool that somebody else knows Dune. Greg Rockenberger, you are now currently my favorite person in the chat, period. Just so you know. Because as far as I'm concerned, whenever I put like a top 10 board game list together, Dune is number 1. The greatest card game of all time, Shadowfist, is number 2, and then everything else kind of like moves around. I do like my German Euros. I do love games like Castles of Burgundy and others that are fantastic freaking games. I'm not necessarily any good at them. That also actually is one of the reasons why I do love them, is because sometimes It's really hard. The hardest game I've ever played is Republic of Rome. And Republic of Rome is I bought it because when a game like Dune, which is a relatively complicated game, on Avalon Hill's complexity scale from the 80s was a 3, Republic of Rome was the only 10 I'd ever seen. I bought it simply because it was a 10. I'm like, I've got to buy this. I got to figure out what it is. The rule book is so thick. The base game really isn't that hard, but when you put everything into it, oh my god! And it's another amazing game where you all play factions within the Roman Senate, and you're trying to keep Rome from imploding and getting overrun by the friggin' by the wars that it's picking, and also at the same time trying to vie for dominance within the Roman Senate. And 6, 8, 9 hours later, a bottle of whiskey and 3 broken friendships, and who's been sent off, who's been exiled into Gaul with an army, and you go out there, fuck you, go out there. And the game's amazing, but it's one of those things where you only get to play it like once every 10 years. So yeah, Republic of Rome. And then, I mean, there's some, by today's standards, there's some medium heavy or heavy Euro games today that are really, really difficult. That are really difficult to play and difficult to play well. And even things like Twilight Struggle are really hard to play well. The most difficult game to play and really learn how to play well is Vlaada Chvátil's Mage Knight, which is an insane, it's an insane experience. And absolutely insane experience. It's completely opaque, and the only way to play Mage Knight is to play it with somebody who knows the rules backwards and forwards. Because they're young and they had nothing to do with their time, nothing to do in their time. They learned how to play it in college when they had an entire weekend to sit around and learn how to play Mage Knight. I don't have that kind of time anymore. The fucking game is insane. It's a great game, brilliant game. We'll only play it when I've got an entire day, and my friend Bernie's at the table, and he can keep me straight on the rules and just tell me what to do. PC games, I play World of Warcraft. I always wind up going back to World of Warcraft. But as far as great board games, I mean, if you're not into the hobby, you know, I'll be happy to do a board game heavy thing. But it's a great hobby for learning, for teaching you things like, one, humility. I was thinking about this earlier. Like, I love playing games I'm not any good at because they teach me humility. I have to, at some point very early in the game, I have to give up on the idea that I'm going to win and go, okay, can I do better than the last time I played? Sorry. I've played Civilization a lot and all that stuff. Good night. I played Civilization, and I like Civilization, the board games that are all have built off of Civilization. The original Avalon Hill Advanced Civilization is a fantastic game. Really a monumental designing, monumental achievement in game design for its time, because it was the first game I ever played there was absolutely zero randomness to. And all that stuff, all the tech tree stuff that we see in all in Sid Meier's Civilization, it all comes from Civilization, all comes from Avalon Hill. And then there's, you know, there's hundreds of games that have been built since then that do variations on it. It's Through the Ages and Nations and all sorts of, tons of them out there, civilization building games. There's multiple versions of Civilization. I mean, once Fantasy Flight got a hold of the thing, they built Sid Meier's Civilization, the board game, which is an enormous, sprawling Ameritrash game. It's just really cool. But again, pack a lunch, stay all day, bring a bottle of whiskey. So, you know, I really love Civilization. We get Advanced Civ to the table like once a year, and it's an event. And I try to get as many people together because you want to play Advanced Civ. You can play it with 4. You want to play it with 6 or 8. That's when, you know, you really want to play Advanced Civ with 8 people, or, you know, just get the whole of the whole from Babylon all the way over to England and get them all playing and everybody, you know, doing their thing. And that game's amazing because it teaches you how to play each stage of the game, and it's a great game. Probably I'd say, you know, there's a lot of games that are really, really difficult depending on how you deal with the people that you've got at the table. Some games are incredibly simple to play and incredibly hard to play well. So it all depends on what you're talking about. But probably the hardest game I've ever played is chess because I'm terrible at it. Or Go. I'm terrible at both of those games. So All right, we're at an hour and 10 minutes, and I've been waxing uninterestingly about board games for the last 10 minutes, so I think it's time to go. 15, really, right? But yeah, unbelievable. It's a golden age of board gaming right now. So many good games coming out on a daily basis. So many just great games. Unbelievable in terms of production value, in terms of the designs. It's a gamer's wet dream right now. It really is. And we have like the free market to deal with that. We have crowdfunding and all that stuff. Without crowdfunding, we'd still be stuck behind a very bad publishing model. So, all right, I think I'm done. Colin Jensen, I was on fire earlier in the evening. All right, you guys take care. I will be on Friday night at 8:30. I'll probably do something on YouTube later in the week. By the way, if you guys don't know, we are rapidly approaching 1,750 people on the YouTube channel, which is really, really good. And there's going to come a point at some point in the future where I am going to monetize the channel. Still not sure when, but when we do, that will open up for super chats and other things, and we'll go from there. So you guys, you take care. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.